He stared at her with the idea of her staying dawning ever brighter. She stared back blankly, but MC took no notice. Jones poured a pint of beef stock into the skillet and let it simmer until all the vegetables were tender. The whole time he pranced back and forth, banging pots and pans and making the kids and Loretta laugh. He took a second skillet and filled it with lard to melt on the stove. When the lard was bubbling, he threw in chunks of hard bread, which deep-fried crisp and brown. The whole time, Jones kept up a stream of talking. "Now, any time I want to quit the day labor and steal, I got me some work cut out. Find me a fancy restaurant." "Not too fancy," Loretta said. "Down-home fancy," he told her, and they both said at the same time, "Way down-home fancy." Jones tossed the cooked bread into a pot to be kept warm at the back of the stove. "Haven't forgotten a thing," he told me. Next, he seasoned the vegetables with salt and pepper. He looked around. "Where'd I put that tin of nutmeg?" "You spent some money on nutmeg?" MC asked him. "What you have against some nutmeg?" Jones asked. "Mama never will spend money on it." Jones made no comment then, no more than to say, "Your mama be home before dark, so she told me this morning." Loretta looked around at them. "I haven't ever seen your mother," she said. "She works," MC said. "What kind of work does she do?" Loretta asked. Nobody ask you what your mama do," Macy Pearl said. "Macy!" Jones said, in a way that said she had been rude, but she had been right as well. Loretta stared angrily at Macy until slowly she realized she had crossed over an invisible line of formality. Jones reached into a cupboard and felt around. He was silent until he found the nutmeg where he had put it. "Macy means if she tells you something, then maybe you feel forced to tell her something. It's just a way in the hills," Jones said. "Whatever you want to say is fine. Most folks say what they want to say, but ask no questions." He poured milk and the contents of the skillet into the large pot. Once he shot a glance at MC. It had a hint of challenge in it. "Talking about strangers, he means she will always be one," MC thought. "You ask me my name and where I come," Loretta broke off as her voice was drowned out by a weird, outlandish yelling from the front of the house. Kindness and light seemed to drain from Jones's face. He grew rigid and slammed the nutmeg tin down on the counter. MC felt coldness on his scalp, as though his hair stood straight up as the sound grew louder. The children stared wildly. Lenny Poole slid off his chair and, pulling Macy down with him, hid under the table. "I'm a hot, and I'm a cold, I'm a snowbody, freeze a water, here la ba la man." Jones rushed from the kitchen, through the parlor, and to the front porch. MC was right behind him. "Daddy," he said. "Don't tell me," Jones said through his teeth. He flew out the door just as the Iceman was about to come up the front steps. "Back off, damn your hide," Jones told the man. "Daddy," MC said. Loretta Outlaw spoke from the soft light of the parlor. "What is it? What's going on?" MC gave her a glance and turned back to the scene out front. "Witchy folks," he whispered. "What?" Loretta said. She came up next to him. "Daddy is working most times when they come," MC said. "With the kids off swimming, I'm the only one here, on my pole." "Who?" Loretta said. "Well, look at them. Witchy people," MC said. "Listen and learn it." In an instant flash of memory, MC recalled Jones telling him long ago, "You can be stalking, hear a sound, you look to see, but there's nothing. Turn back, and he's there on the path, blocking you. Don't try to pass him by, for he knowing where you be before you know, and knowing what you will do. He, with skin so fair he is near white, but hair is always thick and tight, so you can tell, and always almost red. Them gray eyes cold, and even if he do smile pleasant, they stay cold. Don't you turn away, but back down the path the way you come, for he is Merino, or Witchy, as folks here always know him." 3 of them stood there in front of MC's house, 3 men with an odd yellow cast to their skin, and with "Get back! Get on back!" Jones yelled. Mr. Kilburn grinned. "Afternoon, Mr. Higgins," he said in a voice that was as smooth as oil. "MC!" Jones fell back to the door, holding it open as Loretta Outlaw stepped out. "How much ice do you want, Daddy?" MC asked. Kilburn stood still now. He grinned absently as he untied a sack from his belt and spread it on the ground. Easily, his muscles bulging, he heaved the heavy block of ice onto the sack and took up an ice pick. In a crouch, he waited. A ripple seemed to eddy over the 3 men, ending with one of them breaking out in a dance on his toes. Jones got hold of himself. He closed the door and stood there with his back pressed against it. Loretta stared at him, at his fearful eyes. She looked with wonder at the three men with ice. For a long moment she wasn't able to take her eyes off them until indignantly she turned back to Jones and just as quickly cast her eyes away from him. "Daddy, how much ice do you want?" MC said again. "Get me 15 pound," Jones said, keeping his voice even and below a scream. "They don't give any 15, MC told him. It's 20, 25 or 50 pounds, half or all. You know they won't cut out 15. MC stepped off the porch and made a motion over the ice to show he wanted half. Mr. Kilburn took off his heavy gloves and began to pick a line down the middle of the ice. MC had been waiting for one of the men to remove his gloves. Patiently, he always waited for this moment to see those hands. And always he looked at the 6 fingers as if seeing them for the first time. The same as with Ben's hands. He half expected the 6th finger to wave about wildly and uncontrolled. But now it curled around the pick with the other 5, shooting down and then out of the ice again. Kilburn made one powerful stroke with his pick on the line across the ice. The ice broke in half. MC heaved half onto the porch. Instantly the Kilburn men began a calculation in sign language. MC watched closely as their flinty eyes flashed in good humor and their fingers flew. He didn't know why the ice men used signs to figure the price, but they always did. Suddenly they huddled together, talking low. They glanced at Jones. One Kilburn guffawed. In a moment they all had turned back to MC. Mr. Kilburn held up both hands and flashed them at MC 8 times. 96. Turning down 2 fingers of one hand, he flashed the remaining 4. 100, MC thought, amazed. Next, Kilburn held up one hand and 1 finger of the other hand. 7. He lowered his hands, then he raised the fingers of one hand with the thumb held down. "Daddy, they're asking $1.75 for the ice," MC said. Jones exploded. "Throw them back the ice, MC. Break it over their heads."